Hello, my name is Antoinette Ball. I'm one of the founders of the Women's Entrepreneurial Opportunity Project Incorporated, WEOP. And just to let everybody on the call know that WEOP is also a membership organization. And for information about WEOP, we have our website here at the weop.org. We also have a great site for all of our members to connect with other women at weopwomen.com. So make sure you jot down the weop.org and also the weopwomen.com so you can see other wonderful women on that site. You can get monthly newsletters. That's where we post all of our information and business resources, and it's a place where you can connect. We are looking forward to 2022. We have a lot of great upcoming events. We're going to start the year with our primetime contract training course that starts in January. We'll be doing business labs throughout the year. We're also going to have an annual Women's Business Conference Forum in March 2022. And we're always going to do our customized business training programs. And we're going to focus on assets of capital and business training. So just make sure you stay connected to our website, weop.org and weopwomen.com. As usual, we always share resources. So if you notice on here, I have 2 resources that I would like to share with you. There is a program called Backing Small Businesses, and they are giving away grants for women in business. And the deadline is the deadline today?
December 15th.
And the deadline is December 15th. And if you notice, I put the website up here, Reimagine. Let me move this so I can actually read it. It's called reimaginemainstreet.org, and they're providing business grants in the amount of $5,000 to $50,000. And if you go to the site, you'll see all of the criteria for the particular business grants. So that is a resource. I just noticed it was posted online, and any of the entrepreneurs online who have an interest in getting more information about this particular resource, I encourage you to visit this site. Also, for all the entrepreneurs and business owners, the SBA has a employment retention tax credit up to $7,000 per employee. And again, I put the website up here for additional information. You can go to the rs.gov/coronavirus/employee retention credit. And always feel free to go to the SBA to review information about the SBA employment retention tax credit information. So I wanted to share with the group today information about WEOP before we got started. And again, our websites are there. And we're here in the community just to support what you're doing. So again, welcome. My name is Antoinette. We have Tasha. She's also with WEOP on the line. If you have any technical difficulty, please feel free to let us know. And we'll be watching the chat box. So throughout the presentation, if you want to make a comment or have a question, please do so in the chat, and we will immediately bring it to Dr. Gordon's attention. So I'm going to turn it over so we can get started. We only have another, let's see what time is it now. It's 4:05, so we have another 55 minutes to share with you. So I'm going to turn it over to my WEOP board, Lita Speller, who is a powerhouse. Lita has been a partner and a board member with WEOP for several years. So I want to thank you, Lita, for making great recommendations. It's because of her recommendation for Dr. Gordon that Dr. Gordon is here today. So Lita, thank you so much for all your support, your partnerships, for your great recommendations, for all that you do as a financial planner within the community. So you may want to say a few words about yourself as well, so everybody in the call knows who you are, and then we get started with Dr. Gordon.
Yeah, so thank you, Antoinette. And it's just an honor to be a part of the WEOP community and to certainly be a leader in the community. And so thank you. I think the thanks goes to you. I'm happy to contribute in the ways that I contribute. And I am just always ecstatic to bring resources like Dr. Gordon to the community. So it was a no-brainer for me. So I'm not going to talk much about myself at all. I'm actually just going to dive into this conversation because I think the women are here to hear Dr. Gordon. But what I will say is that, this year we witnessed some pretty high profile stances on Black women choosing to prioritize their mental health. it kind of started, well, maybe it didn't start it, but I know the first high profile incident I recall was Naomi Osaka, when she withdrew from the French Open, citing, her challenges or her bouts with anxiety and depression, and just her being overwhelmed by the stress associated with, all of the media circus surrounding the tournament and the tournament star players. And then we saw Simone Biles, right, do a similar thing. And like Antoinette said earlier, the last few years have been really hard. I know they've been pretty challenging for me. And there were days when I felt myself just wanting to hide under my desk or in a closet, just away from everything that was going on in my life. But that wasn't a realistic option. But fortunately, I did have the option of working with an amazing mental health professional who is not only making a profound difference in my life, but also in my business, Dr. Gordon. So I just want to bring her to the stage. I could talk about my issues all day long, but then I'd be telling y'all too much of my business. So we're just going to bring Dr. Gordon to the stage. So Dr. Rhea Gordon is a psychologist and certified coach. She trained at UNC Chapel Hill, Beth Israel Hospital in Boston, and the Harvard Community Health Plan. Her mission is to promote positive change, to inspire others to be empowered and to choose to prosper, and to provide this service with compassion, integrity, and excellence. In therapy, she and her clients focus on healing, recognizing strengths, maximizing new opportunities, and moving powerfully into healthy relationships and life decisions. In coaching, and I can say we, because we absolutely do, focus on bold visioning, realizing a dream or endeavor, expanding and optimizing meaning, purpose, and/or fulfillment in life. And her emphasis is always on empowerment, strength-based choices, and bringing your whole self to bear, producing lasting lifestyle change and helping you clear away what's holding you back so that you can courageously choose to thrive. And I absolutely endorse all of it. So welcome, Dr. Gordon.
Wow, thank you so much, Lita, for that introduction. That's, thank you. And thank you too to Antoinette and to WeUp for providing these resources for the community of women entrepreneurs. One of my loves has been to, I'm sorry, let me get my screen up here too. Why is this? Here we go. Okay. One of my loves has been working with women, and especially women of color. And so I love doing the work that I do. It's very exciting to me and an honor to witness people transforming into their best selves and who they really want to be. So thank you for that. And also thank you to WeUp for having adopting a more holistic approach and expanding your offerings and recognizing mental health as a significant component of success to women entrepreneurs. And welcome to everybody else for being here. Thank you for making the time today.
Dr. Gordon, I have a question for you.
Yep.
Now, we'll be watching the chat. Did you want to make it interactive? Is it okay if
I have enough information to present today, but I am really open to questions. If you see a question that is particularly pertinent or burning, please interrupt me and say, here's a question for you.
Okay, so it's okay if we everybody be interactive and maybe
you can do a little bit of that. Yes, I have a fair amount to get through today, but if it's hitting something and people have something to say, it would be good to hear that.
So I watch the chat. Lita and I will watch the chat.
Great.
And if from time to time, just check with us and see if anything's in the chat that we can share with you.
I'll do that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Nope, that's fine. And I do like being called Dr. Rhea Gordon because I worked really hard for everything that makes me Dr. Rhea Gordon. But I'm also very comfortable in this setting to go by Rhea. The power differential is really something that I want to pay attention to.
Okay.
So I'm one of you.
Okay.
The topic is coping with stress successfully. And one of the first things I'm going to do is to change the title. And don't worry, Antoinette, I'm not changing the topic. I'm just changing the title.
Oh, I'm fine.
In order to improve it and offer something that I believe captures more of what I have to offer for you today. So from coping with stress successfully and strategies for holding it together, I'd like to say now, now why is this not going? There we go. Thriving even in challenging times. We have certainly had a lot of challenging times, but just pause for a moment and just notice the difference between coping with stress successfully and thriving even in challenging times. Notice what a difference the choice of words make. From stress to challenges. Stress really brings in sort of factors that feel sort of heavy and make you have to really pause. A challenge brings up the connotation that this is like a competition, a contest, a game, something to like get into and actually be engaged with. And I think that's a very significant difference. The difference between coping and thriving. Coping is kind of going along, kind of making it through, finding a way to survive. Thriving is even more than that. It's not just surviving. Thriving is really finding a way, like this tree here, that even in some very difficult situations, making the most of what you have. And my goodness, you can be surprised what you come up with. We are all living things are naturally designed to thrive. We have what we need to thrive. It's up to us to believe in that enough that we actually go forward and just do what we need to do. And also what a difference, notice the difference that a perspective makes. A lot of times what holds us back is what we tell ourselves or how we're making sense of the events in our lives. And we can choose to struggle with it or we can choose to grow with it. And growing means actually learning and incorporating what you learn and then doing something more positive with it. It's really about transformation. So those are things that I really want to bring out today in terms of a perspective. And I'd like to offer you not only steps you can take to kind of hold it together at times like this, but also a perspective that makes it easier to really rise up to the challenges and choose to thrive. When we come from a place of fear, we do, Lita, want to crawl under the table sometimes. We do want to, say, oh my goodness, this is just too much for me. And the overwhelm comes. Or a lot of the businesses were really challenged to move virtually and digitally during these times. And they hadn't been set up to do that before. Mine was one of those businesses. And so being able to really face our fears, face the unknown, and try something new and learn with that, and to give yourself the time and the space and the gentleness to allow yourself to grow in those ways and to fail some, because we don't learn without failing some. It doesn't mean we are failures. It means that attempt didn't work. So let's see what we learned and what do we tweak and how do we go forward from there. And so that is a perspective that I'll be talking a little bit more about. We will also take a little bit of a look at stressors and how we deal with them, and also take a look at, when we talk about mental health, what is health? What is healthy? What is mental health? So these last few years have really been a challenge for us. And I want to take a look at that for a minute, because I think if we talk about stress, stress comes from things that are difficult and make us stretch, but stress also comes from good things. If you start a business, if you get married, if you get a promotion, there's usually stress associated with it. So here's the thing about judgment. Hold off on the judgment. It doesn't have to be good or bad. It's just a stressor that gives us the opportunity to grow. So change in itself does produce some stress. And just like the muscles in our bodies, they only grow when they are stretched and they tear a little bit, and then they fill in and repair. And that's what makes you have strong muscles. That's how it happens. So there are kind of normal, quote unquote, stressors in life and challenges that come up that are just a part of being human and living. One of the reasons mental health has become such an important thing during these times, and I will say not just during COVID, is also because of the political unrest that we have experienced and the social injustices that are so much a part of our daily lives. We all know with COVID, the isolation, the fear and the unknown, and the threat of death from COVID. A lot of people working double duty. If you have kids, a lot of those moms that were trying to work, even if the kids were home, that was double duty for them. They didn't have any space or time to actually get their work done. And for some businesses, workers weren't coming to work. And so people had to end up taking on twice the workload. There are all kinds of things, ways that businesses were affected by COVID. And even now, this whole question of what is the workplace evolving to? Are we going to be working from home? Are we going to be in the office? How does that work? How does that work if you have your files in one place and some in another? I mean, it's a lot to juggle. It's a lot to plan. It's a lot to think about. And those things will continue, especially as these variants come and we see what's going to happen. But we're not going back to the way it was. This will be a new normal that we're coming into. And don't forget that you have a voice in that. You have a voice in what you want it to look like, recommendations for how it could look. And it is going to be constantly evolving. And that's what growth is. But I do want to recognize too that even before COVID, we had several years of political unrest where there was not only differences in opinion, but there was constant drama. There was a lot of agitation. There's a lot of just stirring up of things. It's like not just watching the reality shows, it was being in a reality show and experiencing it. And actually, that's what a lot of my clients would come with. And when I'd go to businesses, people would just be talking about it in one way or another. Did you hear what happened on the news today? And also a greater awareness of the social injustices that have always been here, but it brought it to a new height. And in some ways, there's been a permission for people to be more violent. And And people, I think, have responded to the unrest in a way that they are more agitated. And they want to, they're struggling with helplessness and trying to figure out how they can make a difference, where they can make a difference, and speaking out about things more. So I do want to say there is a difference between the normal stresses in life and some of this, what I'm describing now, is a kind of toxicity in the environment and a traumatizing. And that's one of the reasons we are seeing so much stress and depression and anxiety. You take some of the younger folks, they didn't experience the 60s. They didn't experience the 50s or the 40s. And this is one of the first times that they're feeling afraid, for instance, to walk in the park. Older people now are feeling like, I don't want to go out after dark. Everybody's carrying a gun. Things are different than they used to be. So times have changed. And we're also dealing with some toxicity and trauma, which I think is important when we begin to look at how do we then cope and how does this inform us. So one of the things to know is that there is a normal response to trauma, which involves being in shock, which we certainly were with COVID, and we were with certain other situations, and a kind of shutting down so that we only do what's necessary to survive, only do what's necessary to live, okay? And that's the shutting down, coming home, don't interact, just do what's necessary to stay alive, okay? That is surviving. And that is a way of dealing with it, because if you don't survive, you don't get a chance to thrive later, right? You got to make it through first. And so it's not unhealthy to do that, but know that that is a natural response to the first this kind of level of stress. And what we are talking about is the environment being toxic and individuals having to try to figure out how do we then cope with that. In some ways, COVID has also been unifying, though. If you think about it, this doesn't have to do with your political party. And it doesn't have to do with just Americans. This is a unifying enemy, quote unquote, that we're all coping with. One of the things that it does bring up is what our interconnectedness is about and how important it is if you wear a mask. That affects not just you, but the people around you. Are we paying attention to not only what's going on for us, but how we impact people around us? And it's an opportunity to learn from that. One of the other things that I've noticed is that it has also been a chance for people to gather around our similarities more. It's not just black and white as it used to be seen in the US for a long time. We now have other groups, and we have BIPOC. I mean, we've got people that are all coming together to say, look, this is not okay. It's what King was saying all along. If it happens to any one of us, it can happen to any of us. And so we have to really pay attention to what are the injustices and what is justice about, and what is important about how we treat each other. And how is that reflected in our businesses? I think about it every day when I go to Publix. I love going to Publix because of the way I'm treated there. If I say, where is such and such, they stop what they're doing and they go on the aisle with me to help me find it. I mean, there's service. And a lot of us have service-oriented businesses. And so it's thinking about what are those extra things that you do to really show that you're there to provide a service for people and make it easier for them. So there's that. What it gives us, though, is an opportunity to move out of just surviving. Because here we are now, a couple of years past COVID. We now know what to expect. We know some of the things we can do to just cope and survive. The question is, how are we coming out of this into a place where now we can thrive again? What are the things that matter? What do we have to provide? How will it help people? So when you think about your business and what you're providing, the question is, how does it actually add to the people that you're servicing? What does it add to their lives? That's why you're there. And that is a whole different way of looking at it than I'm just going to the job and this is what we have. And if we don't have what you need, forget it. It's just a whole different perspective and a way of being present with people. So this is a chance for healing, a chance for fostering resilience and integrating what you're learning so that you can actually grow with it. So one of the other perspective changes here is seeing challenge as an opportunity. What's the opportunity that we have here? Let's take COVID. We're coming out of it, hopefully. What is the challenge? What are the challenges, but also what's the opportunity? The opportunity has been we learned, some of us have learned some of the digital stuff and technical stuff that we didn't think we knew or could know or wanted to know how to do. Some people have had to be very creative depending on the kind of business you had. The restaurants in particular have had to be very creative in figuring out how do you have, I forget what it's called, but the shopping cart, not the shopping cart, but Instacart, where you can order your groceries, and how do you have restaurants that actually are delivering food? I mean, there are all different kinds of changes that people have had to make. And that is the opportunity. How could you be creative and how could you grow? So learning and growing, I've already talked a little bit about that. That whatever you do, however you respond to a situation, know that you are collecting information and learning from it. If you take it in, use it, tweak what you were doing, you get a little bit better every day. One of the things that I loved about Biden and his team when he came in is one of the things they said is, we're not perfect. We're not going for perfection. We just want to be a little bit better every day. And if you can keep moving in that direction, it's not just about achieving. In the business world and in the corporate world, there's a lot of pressure to do more, to handle more, to work more hours, make more money, And the question is, can you take it step by step so that you're getting a little bit better? You're actually moving toward where you want to go. And to have some grace with yourself along the way. Are there any questions or comments so far?
I think I see one. It says, yes, those challenges created opportunities for additional entrepreneurs to think outside the box to be better and create solutions. And that's from Catherine. Thank you, Catherine. That was great.
Absolutely.
And then I wrote that collecting information and learning from it. And that's a great strategy. I can work on just being a little better every day, which is, I mean, we all have the tools to work on that, which is very, very important.
Mhm.
And we're learning to do things a lot differently. I mean, we're not doing things the same anymore.
Mhm.
And I think what COVID has taught us that life is so fragile, it can be taken away so quickly. So we have to start appreciating the people that are around us, and that's so important.
So that's the other learning, right? Is that work in itself is not the only thing that matters.
Mhm.
The people around us, the differences that we make in each other's lives. One of the quotes I love is, what are we here for if not to make life easier for each other? I mean, that we've had all these years, God even sent his own son down to teach us this. We're still learning it, right? Um, so I want to take an extra step from the learning and the growing to an idea of health, um, to include some other things as well. So if you were asked, are you healthy? And how do you know? What would you come up with?
Are you saying physically or mentally?
The whole picture.
Okay. Well, that's a hard question.
You
I
know,
would say no.
it's a big question, right? And
Mhm.
how do you know if you're healthy? So I want to take a look of the picture of health and what does that mean? So we started, and I'll do this very briefly. We started with the medical model, which simply was there is disease and then there is being without disease. So healthy meant without disease, without infirmity. And so what does that mean then for people, for instance, who are born with physical or mental defects or challenges or differences? Does that mean that you're still diseased or you have an infirmity or you're not healthy? What does that mean? So we moved slowly to a holistic model. And again, that goes to your question, Antoinette, of do you mean physically? Do you mean emotionally? And holistic is really looking at the whole person.
Hmm.
So we're talking about physical, emotional, spiritual, um, social well-being. Okay, and actually, that term came about as early as 1947 with the World Health Organization, moving away from the medical model strictly into a more holistic model that could also consider things like maybe you don't have a disease right now. Maybe you are really anxious because there's something going on in your life. Maybe you're grieving. So maybe if we work on the grieving rather than just giving you some medication, maybe we can see some change, right? And then we got into all these other pictures of what is preventive health and what are some other things that we can do to get better and function better at a higher level without necessarily having to just go to medication. So over time, it then grew into what is now called the wellness model. This is about well-being. This is about the habits we get into and the routines we get into that actually say, I'm living life in a healthy way. So, for instance, when we're feeling all this overwhelm at work, this was a lot to tackle and to handle in these last few years. And things, starting up a business, keeping a business running, it's very easy to get overwhelmed at different times for different reasons. So, what is the wellness thing? This is about a pathway to optimal living. Okay, so being able to live your best, not necessarily at your fastest, at your hardest, at your most productive. Because one of the things we do know in health is overuse creates problems too.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay? That if you work, and don't take care of yourself in other ways, that's not effective either. That's not the best way to stay healthy. So there's some important pieces to this wellness and optimal living piece. And again, in terms of perspective, if you're moving from just getting through and coping to actually learning and growing, and then thinking about what is your well-being and what is your best self and what is optimal living, that you go about it a different way and you make different choices. I marvel at my son, who is 28, and he he tells his boss, he got a promotion, and his boss said, so I guess you're going to be working more hours now, because you've got this. He says, oh no, I do my job and I do it more effectively than most other people. And you've told me I don't have as many mistakes as other people. And the only way I can do that is to know that I'm at work and then I have time for me. And if I don't have time for me, I can't be present at work the way I am. So I'll be working the same number of hours, and I'm like, oh my goodness. But he was right. He gets his work done. The creative process takes a whole different process than some other kinds of jobs. And that's some of what he needs to be able to function. And I think having that kind of balance is really something to take a look at. So when we look at wellness, there's some really important pieces to this. One, wellness is intentional. It's conscious, it's self-directed, it's on purpose. You don't succeed just because. It's intentional. It's also dynamic. It's an evolving process. It's alive. I love that word, dynamic. It means it's constantly changing, which means you constantly have a chance to be a little bit better, to get it a little bit different. And we all know in our businesses, when we've taken on something new, a new task, a new line of products that we're offering or whatever, it's about allowing yourself to be open to creativity, because sometimes things just come to you when you're in the process of doing it, right? And that in itself is a different kind of flow. It's a different kind of reward, intrinsic value to that. And so the dynamic part is it's constantly evolving and you're working toward full potential. I think some of the best work that I have seen are clients who ground themselves in being the best something that they want to be, the best father, the best employee, the best bank leader, the best whatever. And it really colors for them how they choose, for instance, at a bank, how they choose to make a difference in someone's life. Do you just tell them about the services the bank has? Or do you look at their situation and say, this might be better for you? How about this for you? And it makes you do your work in a whole different way if you just stay grounded in what's important to you. Being the best that you can be, whatever that you define that as. The other thing we know is that when we're talking about the dynamics of it, we do know that being healthy and being well is also a factor in if you stay well. So it's not just do the right things and you'll be well, but also if you are positive, if you are well, if you are getting things, if you feel rewarded by the work that you do, you are much more likely to do good work. So it's not just an output, it's also an input into the whole process. It's multidimensional, which is that holistic part, physical, emotional, social, intellectual, spiritual, and people have included occupational. I mean, what you do for your job, you spend most of your day there. It makes a difference what you do. And if you love it, if you like it, right? I remember talking to a group of state employees, and I was saying, if you don't like your job, figure out what there is to like about it, even if it's just one thing, and take that with you into the workplace. It makes a difference. Your attitude will change about being there, and it will give you a way to find meaning and purpose in what you're doing, even if it's just something small. Wellness is also about being positive and affirming, having a strong and positive sense of self. I can't tell you how many most of us have some place in our lives where we question ourselves. We either feel like we're not measuring up, or we're not going to be good enough, or oops, we're going to do it wrong and somebody's going to find out, that we weren't all that. That there are these places each of us has to do with questioning ourselves, and it's a lot of negativity that comes in. That does not serve us well. Okay, and at another time, I can actually do a workshop on these saboteurs and how they are there, quote unquote, to protect us from getting hurt, but they actually get in the way and make it more likely that we really won't move forward. Mm-hmm. So positive and affirming is a definite part of wellness. And it doesn't mean you have to be Pollyanna-ish and only look at what's positive, but it does mean give yourself credit for the things that are going right, not just always looking at what's going wrong, right? And to be grateful for your blessings and for the things that are going right. This also helps to affirm and mobilize your own positive qualities and your strengths. And then flourishing is just another way of saying thriving. But there has been a whole lot of research on how important it is to be happy. People who are happy with their lives at the end of their lives aren't just looking at were they quote unquote successful in their jobs. They're looking at what kind of difference did they make in the world? Were they content? Were they happy? Where was the joy while they were alive? That's what being alive is. And so this whole idea of flourishing, and this is not new. Even the Greeks had a whole word, and I can't remember it right now, but had a whole word about living your best life. And that included finding ways for joy and being happy in your life with some contentment. So that's an important part of wellness.
Ray, I have a question because,
Yes.
I hear the word happy. It's almost like sometimes we don't even understand what being happy is. So how would you, during this time, how do we define like being happy, or how do we understand what happiness even means for us? Like,
so that's part of why I brought in the word joy. That what is it that really sings to your soul? What is it that really speaks to you, that has an intrinsic value that gives back to you? We also know that finding meaning in life is really important, to feel like you aren't just going to the job, going through the motions, but that you are actually contributing in some way and it is meaningful to you. And having a purpose in life, even if you're not really sure what your purpose is. Mitch Albom is one of those people who writes books about appreciating people before they, as they're dying, and also the 7 people you meet in heaven. And I'll never forget this one story he told about a man whose life was working as a mechanic in some of those traveling fairs, and he would work on the moving parts of the rides. And he didn't really think that his job was all that important, and it felt very mundane to him. And one day the Ferris wheel stopped, and this little girl was about to fall out, and he was able to fix it so that she could get off safely, right? She was one of the people that he met in heaven when he passed away. And she said, "You were there to take care of the children." And so, sometimes we may not even realize what some of our purpose is or the difference that we are making in lives. But those are the things that have to do with being happy. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Mm-hmm. I think it's almost like you're saying we have to find that definition, define what happiness is. If we can't define it, then we're never going to achieve it.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying that, because I think sometimes, looking for it and asking yourself, am I happy? What would make me happier? For instance, one of the things for me right now, at this point in my life, developmentally, I'm looking at, you said, oh, we can help you. We can give you plugs. Do you have a website? Do you do? And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. I'm at the point in my life where I want to slow down a little bit. I want to do some of the things I haven't had time to do. I want to do some woodworking. I want to do some gardening. I want to do some other things that fulfill me in a creative way that's different from what the job gives me. And so it's about kind of paying attention to what kinds of things just make you feel better. I mean, I know someone who says, well, I sit and I knit at night, and I'm not making anything in particular. I just know that it relaxes me and it helps me be more present with my husband. It helps me be more present with my kids. It helps me be calm. And it helps me get a good night's rest. So I'm present in a different way the next morning. So those are the kinds of things when we talk about happy. And what can you look back on? So I have 15 minutes. These are a few strategies that I will go through very quickly. Any questions or other comments at this point? Yes.
I was just going to make this statement when you were talking about happiness, because I was talking to my mentor when you were talking about that. And we were talking about what is the actual difference of happiness? Like, is it like as far as like laughter and things like that, or is it more peace, inner peace, and something that you can't see, that's more reserved for you and you alone, as opposed to what others may perceive? Because you could be sitting like this and you're not smiling, but you're happy. But as opposed to someone seeing your outer appearance and you're always having a smile, but you're not truly happy on the inside. So to me, sometimes we struggle with figuring out what type of happiness are we.
Yes, and exactly. That we're not just talking about, oh, are they laughing and happy? We're talking about a kind of contentment, a kind of satisfaction. And it's interesting, I also do these workshops on setting, I want to find another way to say it, but really a goal setting. And it's really about visioning what you want for your life. And I have several people who come up with other ways of saying it, and finding peace can be a goal. Okay, so yes, peace is certainly part of it. And what does that mean for different people? And it'll be different, it'll be very individual and very different. But they're actually in the field of psychology. There has been a lot of research on happiness and what it is. So, I mean, that's another workshop, you know. And I do this because it kind of, you know, we look at the Buddhists who've been mindful and practicing meditation for centuries, right? And a group of them came here when they had to leave and Thailand. And so Emory is doing all this research now on meditation and what changes happen in your brain and da, da, da. And the thing is, we don't have to have all that to know that it works. You know, and it makes a difference because people have been doing it for centuries and they can tell, they can see the difference. So, yes. So, mindfulness actually is a strategy. And by mindful, what we mean is practicing focus. And focus means that you're honing in on the things that matter and kind of not paying as much attention to the noise. Okay. So being mindful is about being present and not allowing yourself to be as hijacked by the noise around you. You know, it's okay if we turn off the news and don't listen to it for a week. It's okay. And what are we mindful of? Hopefully not just achieving. Hopefully we're mindful of kindness. We're mindful of peace. We're mindful of space and graciousness and being open to what emerges. And that sounds real nebulous, but you would be surprised what a difference it makes when you go into a situation with that kind of perspective and outlook. And so mindfulness is actually a practice. And the field of psychology has now picked it up, Western psychology, and uses it in all different kinds of approaches and models for mental health interventions, for making life better. Okay. One of the things I mentioned earlier is just notice. What I mean by that is when there is drama around or when things happen and you're getting all stirred up, and you find yourself getting anxious or angry or frustrated or overwhelmed or whatever, just pause, hit the pause button, and just notice, just observe what's happening, what are you feeling, and in that pause, you get to choose what your options are.
Yes.
Okay. And so that's the kind of just noticing that really works. One of my clients put it perfectly. He said, "Oh, you mean observe and don't absorb." And I think that is just so perfect because it's the stirring up that takes us to places that derail us. One of the other things to really keep in mind is self-care. When we get stressed is the time that we don't eat right or we don't sleep enough or we sleep too much, right? Those little things of being able to take the walks that make a difference to somebody or being able to take a bath that's just a little bit longer. Those having downtime, not just playtime, but downtime. We were talking about a staycation, you know, and how important it is it's okay to just watch the movies. You know, I want to watch Christmas movies and have cookies. I mean, that's okay.
Yeah.
And that is self-care. The most significant factor in how someone recovers from stress or a trauma is your support system. I did my dissertation on recovery from rape. And one of the things that the research shows is that your support system is even more important than how violent the rape was, or how long it lasted, or how many assailants there were. Whether you had somebody who believed you, supported you, gave you room to kind of work through things. So support system is really important. And when we're talking about businesses, nobody makes it alone. Thank goodness for, organizations like WeOp. Thank goodness for mentors. Thank goodness for people like Lita who do their work, but also share it. Your support system is really important. And so make connections. And it's also why COVID hurt so much. How do you maintain the connections? And virtually only is not good enough. There's something about touch. There's something about being close to people. There's something about sharing experiences together that makes a difference. So support is a really important part of this. Growth mindset. I talked about that a little bit earlier. This whole mindset that when there is a challenge, it's not about backing away because it's scary. It's about saying, well, let me try. Let me see. Let me go back and try this again. If it didn't work out this time, let me try it again. Let me see what I can learn this time. That's how people grow. If a child stopped walking every time they fell, they wouldn't walk. It's about us having that growth mindset. And the other thing is overwhelm is another thing that comes up a lot. Take it one step at a time. When you're starting a business, you're thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know how to do a business. What do I have to do for technology? What do I have to do economically? What do I have to do for my books? What do I have to do for my branding? What do I have to do for my website? Oh my goodness, I got to do a newsletter. I've got, what are all these things? How am I going to do this? Right? One step at a time. You can do a lot of things. You can't do them all at once. One step at a time. And acceptance, what we mean by acceptance is accepting things as they are. Sometimes we don't want to see it the way it is, but if we see it the way it is, then at least we can work with it, even if it means we have to grieve something. Acceptance means accepting our own imperfections and the imperfections of others. I was just talking with a woman this morning. It says, I'm a psychologist. My child is hurting. I should be able to fix it. No, your child has to go through the changes just like everybody else's child. You don't have to fix it. You can just be there for that child as they go through their own learning and growing. One of the adolescents, his mom spoke at his high school graduation, and he said, Mom, you don't have to be the sage on the stage anymore. Just be the guide on the side. It's like perfect, So acceptance really is something about accepting your own imperfections, accepting imperfections of others, accepting that life is not perfect, and accepting that we can still try. We can still go for it.
That is such a perfect ending.
Yep.
In terms of all these strategies and insights that you shared, it was very, very beneficial. And I want to thank you. Did anybody else have any closing comments as we close down? It was such a soothing and enlightening conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm looking forward to you being with us in 2022 just to keep the conversation going with a small core group of women who need to kind of talk through some things. And we had great comments. I said, take it one step at a time. Great advice for the new year. Mindful of being in the moment, being present. Finding peace can be a goal. I like that. And giving ourselves grace. So I want to thank everybody that made a comment. And this was just a really great kind of conversation to kind of end the year. This is WEOP's last event for the year. And we appreciate people like yourself, Rhea, to keep spreading that kind of advice and that nurturing support. And I noticed that you shared your phone number with anybody that wants to jot it down, 404-378-9444. And I love this statement about live courageously, thrive on purpose. And it's in times of COVID and all the things that are going on with us, we just have to find peace within ourselves and learn how to be in the present. And it's so, so important.
Absolutely. And for people that were here, take a few moments to just ask yourself, what's a takeaway for yourself? So that's a gift to you, and for you to hold on to that as you go forward from this. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. Thank you for recommending me, Lita. And thank you, Antoinette, for taking the chance. And I appreciate all of the rest of you. I hope I get to see you again.
Okay, and thank everybody for attending. And we look forward to connecting. Everyone on the call, please have a great, happy holidays. We have a Merry Christmas. And feel free to reach out to WEOP whenever you need that support. And thank you again. Thank you, Rhea, for all your advice and peacefulness. And we're going to sign off.
Thanks.
And Lita, thank you too as well.
Yeah.
And Latasha, thank you too for being our technical person. So bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Dr. Gordon, thank you, everybody.
Bye.